So I know I said the Digimon World review was going to be the next video, but one, that one is going to take a while to make and I'm not willing to sacrifice quality to get it out faster, and two, this was a long time coming. I actually planned on talking about Sonic on this channel a long time ago. Back when I was in college, I had a script written and was ready to record my voiceover for a review of Sonic Adventure, the first game I ever played in the series, and possibly even the first game I ever played on a home console. I was a baby around the time the Genesis and Super Nintendo were getting some of their heaviest hitters, and I didn't get to experience gaming much outside of a Pizza Hut arcade until the Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast era, but I'll get deeper into that history when I eventually review the Hedgehog's first major 3D outing. Well, for one reason or another, I ended up ditching that script and moving on to the Spider-Man games for reviews instead, thinking I could do more justice to the blue blur once I got a bit more seasoned, and while I'm no professional at this sort of thing now, I like to think I've gotten a little better at analyzing games, and I think it's finally time for me to pay tribute to a franchise that helped me get into gaming. And we're starting where it all began, the original classic on the Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive in regions outside the US. You know, funnily enough, I was gonna look at this last year, but I was waiting for the Origins collection to come out, and Some Call Me Johnny was already revisiting the Metroid and Sonic series. Since I was already looking at one of these franchises around that same time, it just would have felt weird reviewing Sonic games around then too. But come on, there's always somebody out there talking about this series, and besides, how long can a man be on a Sonic podcast before he actually does Sonic content on his channel? I think it's finally time to get that ball rolling, so I'm not bothering with a spoiler warning this time. I am going into detail, but this game also came out in 1991 and barely has a story to begin with. Sue me. For all of you still here, it's time to look at Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Sonic has been one of the most important figures in the gaming industry since the launch of his first title. Now, how well he's held on to that power over time is up for debate, but this guy was a pretty big deal when he first hit the scene. He wasn't out here reinventing the wheel or anything, but he did bring a quality product to an industry that was at the perfect stage for some good old-fashioned competition. And sorry if you were hoping there wouldn't be any comparisons to a certain mustache plumber in this video, but it's hard to discuss the origins of Sonic the Hedgehog without addressing how he was on at least some level conceived as a response to Super Mario. I mean, this thing right here was the piece of tech that tried to emulate the arcade experience in people's homes, but this was the one that succeeded. Nintendo helped lay the groundwork for the new age of video games, how they were developed, how they were sold, and very importantly, how their design was adapted from arcades to the home console. Super Mario Bros. Was about more than just eating up your quarters with addictive gameplay. It took all your money up front and got you addicted after the fact. Of course, as time went on and our favorite Italian Koopa Crushers starred in more and more titles, it was only a matter of time until a company like Sega came along trying to get a slice of that success. But it wouldn't be enough to be a mere imitator, to be someone just riding the coattails of another property's success. It had to be a strong IP with its own qualities and marketing power. So, take some character design principles from Mickey Mouse, get a talented group of devs together and get to work on a game that would take this standard mascot platforming fare and give it color, character, charm, and speed. Blast processing. That's the term Sega used to try to market this system back in the day. They were running neck and neck with Nintendo, jumping onto the 16-bit era, and the promise of a more powerful console probably sounded really impressive at the time, but it was that lower price tag that really got systems moving, and with it, Sonic the Hedgehog made his way into people's living rooms. Not in like a home invasion kind of way, just like, you know what, never mind.
That's no good.
I think it's really easy for people to look back on this game in retrospect and see nothing but its flaws, and yeah, they are there. This game was followed up by plenty of other titles that took the foundation laid out here, they polished it up, expanded on it, sanded out the edges, and made a better experience, but while I would agree that this is the weakest title in Sonic's classic main lineup, it helped spark the franchise. It proved that Sega could be a heavy hitter in this market, and it didn't do that without bringing something to the table. The premise of this game is kept simple, but it works well for a quick pick-up-and-play title from this era. Dr. Eggman, known in the States as Dr. Robotnik, is an evil scientist on a quest to find 6 ancient artifacts known as the Chaos Emeralds, hidden somewhere on South Island, the home of our protagonist. Where did these emeralds come from? What do they do? Why are they important? 6? Isn't that one short of the whole set? Don't worry about it. Eggman probably wants the emeralds as a power source to expedite his progressing empire of industrialization, pollution, and construction across the world of the game. To aid him in his efforts, he builds up an army of robot goons, or badniks, which is one of the best names for a video game enemy I've ever heard, that are all powered by small animals he captures around the island. That's where our titular hero Sonic the Hedgehog comes in to save the day. His mission is simple: save the animals, beat up Eggman, and maybe collect those elusive Chaos Emeralds along the way. Right off the bat, he just stands out in all the best ways. Sonic has a great design, he always has. There was some confusion in how to present him artistically when he made his way overseas. Some people drew him differently than others, but I don't think anyone's gonna have any strong feelings about that. But yeah, all the basic elements are just here. That smug face, those pointy quills, the clean red sneakers. This guy is cool, he's got attitude, he's pretty wizard, you know, as the kids would say. And of course, that's not even mentioning how wonderfully expressive he is, just from getting impatient from not getting a move on to the faces he makes when he's balancing on a ledge. These are the design elements that help you really remember a character. There's not a whole lot you have to remember about controlling him. The Genesis controller has 3 buttons, but they all do the same thing: jump. Obviously, the D-pad moves Sonic around, and by running up to enemies and jumping above them, he'll curl into a ball and use his quills to bust that badnik and free the animal trapped inside. He can curl into a ball while moving too, by holding the D-pad downward after building some momentum, which is helpful for tackling enemies head on. Obviously, the badniks aren't just out here waiting to get hit, they'll be coming after you too, and they can take you out with as little as a touch. That is, of course, unless you're carrying rings, these little pieces of shiny jewelry scattered across every zone. There's not really a canon explanation to the origins of these things, but there's a pretty strong theory about how they were created by magic bees that created them by swirling around in circles. When holding at least 1 ring, Sonic can take damage without dying, but he'll suffer from some knockback, and every ring he's carrying at the time will go flying. Only a certain amount will visibly spawn from him, but as they scatter, you have a small window in which you can pick a couple of them up again, and the invincibility frames you get after taking damage can help give you a little wiggle room with this. If you manage to collect 100 rings, you'll gain an extra life. You know, back when that actually meant something. You have a limited amount of lives. If you lose them all, guess who's starting from the beginning of the game? Now, this can sound really intimidating, but it was really how the game cycles worked back in the day, and the danger of having to start over is where some of the demand for skill and tension from the game's challenges came from. You do have a couple of things in your favor. For one thing, you can run past these little posts that act as checkpoints. So, if you interact with one, you'll spawn back from it if you lose a life later in that act. You can also protect yourself not only with rings, but also with the power-ups that you find in these little TV monitors. You can find extra lives in these, a shield that will allow you to take a hit of damage without losing any of your rings, you can find rings to add to your count, high-speed shoes that will let you run around faster, and an invincibility status that will let you move freely without taking damage from anything. Well, save for being crushed by the environment or falling down Dim's pits. That brings us to something I think is looked back on with the most ire when it comes to Sonic 1, and that would be the level design. There are 6 zones in the game. Well, kind of 7, but not really. And 3 acts per zone. Things start off smoothly with Green Hill Zone. This is probably the most iconic location in the series and something just about anyone can recognize. The music is upbeat and oh so catchy. The color palette is bright and warm. It's like the sort of place you'd love to actually visit, and it shows a bit of the habitat Sonic is trying to protect. This is also where promises are made. Some of those promises are kept, and others are not so much. But I feel like people tend to remember more of what isn't carried through past this zone more than the aspects that actually are. We obviously have our standard platforming stuff here, plenty of areas to move around on and areas to jump to. The first zone teaches you that you'll need to jump into some out-of-reach places in order to find goodies that will help you out, and that Eggman's badniks will be littered all throughout the terrain to try and stop your progress. What I think people remember the most is the speed Sonic can build up in some sections of the Green Hill Zone, even traveling through these loops and down tunnels. These moments are fleeting, but they stick with you, and as you play through the game several times, you start to learn where everything is and you pick up the best ways to move through the environment. Each act has separate paths you can take to reach your destination, and the highest path is usually the quickest and sometimes the safest, but once you fall from the higher ground to one of the lower levels, it can be hard or impossible to get back up there, and you just have to finish the level out with a new method. You'll also need to remember where certain things are, stuff like springs to propel you upwards or forwards, spikes to avoid, where monitors are hidden, where badniks are waiting to get the drop on you, through, and where some moving platforms are that you can use to reach new areas. Something I gathered early on is that it's really hard to appreciate any level in Sonic 1 on your first playthrough of it. They all have something to find or discover, and Green Hill Zone kind of dangles that carrot in front of you, but the later levels try to build on that idea. And there's the thing, while yes, there is something to be said about how those bouts of speedy gameplay stand out to the player, and there's a decent amount of it in the 3 acts that make up this first zone, I feel like a lot of players have experienced the first area so many times and have gotten so familiar with it that they forgot about some of the design foreshadowing that's going on here. Green Hill Zone also has enemies that will knock you on your butt if you aren't careful and get too cocky while trying to go fast. It has traps that will send you flying backwards and end your momentum. It has really dumb obstacles like this spike trap that thinks iframes don't exist. It will continue to harm you over and over until you're dead. But it also teaches you about something that will help you in several other areas of the game. When people think about the loops and tunnels in this game, I think the idea that sticks with everybody is the sensation of speed, of going fast. But to me, it's more about playing with the momentum and physics and how this game messed around with those ideas differently than its platforming contemporaries. In several other zones like Spring Yard or Starlight, you'll see loops, slopes, or slides that will ask you to hold down while you're traveling through them, and while you're rolled into a ball, you'll start picking up speed, which will help you manipulate your own momentum to get you up to higher places that will make your journey a lot easier and faster. Now, there's a common criticism I hear about this that I don't totally disagree with. There's a reason the other classic games are still better than this. There's a lot of waiting in this game, and it starts as early as Green Hill Zone, but feels really apparent in the game's second area, Marble Zone. Waiting for platforms to move, waiting for enemies to get to a position you can actually take them out from, waiting for obstacles to get out of your way. But one thing I actually really like about Marble Zone is how it takes advantage of some of the underappreciated aspects of this game, like exploration. This zone introduces the temple theme to Sonic's world, something I personally can't get enough of, but also hosts secret areas that not only have extra gubbins like 1-ups to find, but also shortcuts that allow you to skip entire portions of an act and rewards you for learning the area's layout and taking advantage of it. It's something I think this game is actually pretty good at. Even some of the zones that are recognized as the most tedious, like Labyrinth Zone, drag on for longer than they need to. Seriously, I think the waiting game is at its worst here. But even in Act 1 of Labyrinth Zone, you can activate a secret platform that lets you just ride past half the level and get a move on. I know it sounds kind of backwards to say, yeah, this road is pretty fun to drive on once you start driving on the sidewalk and avoid all the potholes, but I do think there's merit to how much smoother and experienced this game can be once you've learned how it's structured and become more familiar with the tricks it has up its sleeve. I would still say that Green Hill Zone is the most fun to play through, but Marble and Labyrinth help take advantage of that exploration and exploitation element, and Spring Yard and Starlight help offer more of that speedy, momentum-based travel that everybody loves so much from Green Hill. The biggest caveats would be Labyrinth's slow movement in the water, and while there's plenty of air bubbles to keep you from actually drowning here, that music that starts playing when your air is running out is anxiety incarnate. And then there's just a lot of annoying obstacles in Spring Yard Zone. Again, it gets better when you know the terrain and can blast through stuff faster, but there's some places where the pacing is just entirely out of your control, and I think this zone is also where a lot of the power-up placement makes the least amount of sense. Like, why give me the speed shoes and invincibility where they're just objectively not useful? The sixth and final zone, which I enjoy the least, is Scrap Brain Zone. Try moving forwards and collect these rings right at the start of Act 1. Scrap Brain will be happy to punish you for it, and between the bizarre enemy placement, annoying Tesla things that shock you, disappearing platforms and saws just absolutely everywhere, there is no speed here. Just pain. You can make things a little easier on yourself by collecting extra lives along the way or by entering special stages. At the end of Act 1 and Act 2 of every zone, or just Act 1 of Scrap Brain Zone, by passing the goalpost with 50 rings in hand, you'll see a warp ring that you can jump into and enter a special stage. There are 6 of these special stages in total, and each one contains plenty of rings to pick up and a Chaos Emerald waiting to be collected. You have to roll around, bounce off springs, and jump off walls to gather rings and avoid the walls that will automatically end the stage. If you get 50 rings, you'll be awarded with a Continue, allowing you to start a level from the beginning if you run out of lives with 3 new lives to burn through, and of course, 100 rings in this stage will net you a 1-up just like in normal zones. Reach the end of the stage and collide with these color-changing crystals until they disappear, giving you access to the Chaos Emerald. Collect all 6 and that's it. No more special stages at the end of X regardless of how many rings you've got. The Chaos Emeralds in and of themselves are pretty much useless, I'll get to that later, but there's a huge benefit to getting all these continues and 1-ups, especially since stocking up on all of these allows you to be a little more reckless in Scrap Brain Zone. By now, it's easier to justify just taking damage, grabbing a ring or two that pops out, and moving on. You should have enough lives at this point, and there's no more incentive in trying to clear a level with a certain amount of rings. Once you make it to the end of Act 2, you see Eggman, the royal pain in your side that's been in your way all game long. He'll be waiting at the end of the 3rd act of every zone with some kind of contraption to fight you in a one-on-one boss battle. I appreciate that they gave Eggman this level of presence, but he's never really difficult to beat. I especially like that if you know how to time it, you can cheese him with a few hits before the fight even starts. You know he's coming, and you're gonna make him regret it. Okay, you know what? I do hate this encounter with him in Labyrinth Zone. It's cool that there's no fanfare before the encounter like in previous zones, but he's just here at the end of Act 3, and you had to give chase, but man, it's so easy to get too hasty and take damage here, and you have very little wiggle room because there's no extra rings to collect and the water is rising to not only slow you down, but also possibly kill you because there's no extra air bubbles to get. You can hit Eggman a couple of times here, but I don't even know if you can actually beat him. I just focus on getting to the end and freeing the animals there to call it a day. But in this encounter at the end of Scrap Brain Act 2, Eggy just laughs behind his force field and sends the hedgehog plummeting down to... oh, come on. Yeah, just please learn the shortcut to get through here faster. It's not too difficult to pull off, and after this terrible encounter, the last thing I needed was to see more Labyrinth Zone. That just leaves the final battle with Eggman. He'll come at you with these columns to crush you, and electro balls to take you out, and regardless of how you entered this fight, you've got 0 rings. There is no safety net here. It can be a little easy to get knocked out in this fight sometimes, but it's still nothing insanely challenging. After about 8 or so hits, Eggman will retreat, trying to escape in his Eggmobile, but one last hit will send him down to the ground, ending your adventure. Sonic returns to Green Hill Zone, and if you collect all the Chaos Emeralds, he'll use them to bring some life back to the environment and leave Eggman raging in his defeat. But what if you complete the game without the Emeralds? Sonic still returns home with his little friends you've rescued along the way, but Eggman can be seen after the credits taunting you with any of the Emeralds you missed. That's, all the difference getting the Emeralds makes. Not much of a payoff, but at least the special stages are still useful for the 1-ups and continues can get from them. Overall, this game does struggle to really take advantage of that speed that Sonic can offer. Again, I think Spring Yard and Starlight Zone help bring back some of the blast processing that we saw in the first area, but it's still hampered by a lot of questionable design choices, and even getting in some of those faster routes in these better zones requires a lot of just standing there and waiting for the environment to let you in. Still, it feels wrong for me to look back on this like it's an overall bad game. I was actually a little worried about returning to this one for the review. It's the classic Sonic game I've gone back to play the least. Well, other than CD, but I didn't even get to play that for the first time until recently. But the more I played it, I just had more and more fun. In the course of a couple of days, I played this game on my Genesis Classic, Steam on my computer, my phone with the Christian Whitehead port, and the Switch, which was my main method of recording for this review. Believe it or not, the mobile port is the best one, with added features from future games that help make it a more streamlined experience, popping visuals, and widescreen. Now the Switch port has the spin dash, but none of those other nice features, which baffles me. I mean, the phone port is close to 10 years old by now. Why is it not on consoles? Classic Sega, I guess? At least I can still activate scan lines. I mean, call me a pretentious old fart, but I think this game actually really does benefit from them. I still think the weirdest way to play this game is through the Genesis collection on Steam, where you have this little hub area modeled like a 90s kid's bedroom. It's cute, I guess, but if you have a VR headset, you can play these games while sitting in that room in virtual reality. Why is this even a thing? And a better question, why did I play an entire run of this game this way? However you choose to play this title, you won't have a hard time playing it. It's on just about everything. You know, just ignore the GBA port. We don't talk about that. And the game is maybe an hour long, shorter if you really know what you're doing. It's a piece of gaming history. It has its flaws. The sequels are better, but I can't not recommend such an important part of what made the gaming industry what it is today. I don't know that everyone who picks this up now will end up liking it as much as I did, but I still have to recommend sitting down and giving a chance to Sonic the Hedgehog. Wait, the Christian Whitehead port doesn't let me cheap shot Eggman at the beginning of fights? You know what? Forget everything I said. Worst version of the game. Well, that was a longer video than I expected to make, but I had a lot of fun talking about this one. I mean, it's Sonic. I think before we finally talk about Digimon World, I have to make at least one more video about the Blue Blur, so I hope you'll join me next time as we take a look at one of the most beloved games in the series with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. But until then, remember that my top tier patrons get to see these videos 2 days early. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Sunset City, whichever you prefer. Links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching. It is hard for me to believe it took this long for me to actually do Sonic content on my channel. I mean, anybody that knows me knows how much I love the little blue dude. You know, I have my gripes with him, every Sonic fan does, but he is special to me, his entire franchise is, and I'm glad that I finally have the chance to share why I love this series with you guys. I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna pace looking at the entire series, but I mean, at some point I'm gonna cover just about everything that I can, so buckle in, we'll get to it when we get to it. Of course, I wouldn't have a chance to do any of it if it wasn't for wonderful supporters like you, the people that watch my videos, or that like and comment on them, the subscribers, and of course, my Patreon supporters. And I have to give a very special shout out to my top tier patrons this month. They are Brendan Hess, Christine Larkin, Earl Valco, Jeremiah Harrison, Letterick, McKenzel, Mr. SP, Wonton Photo, Nicholas Morgan, Patricia Marcoux, and Cirrus the Skeptic. Thank you all so much for watching and for your continued support. You guys really do make this possible, and you make it worth it. Next video should be Sonic the Hedgehog 2, should be 1, maximum 2 weeks, and I'm still kind of hacking away at the Digimon World review. Will I review Sonic CD before Digimon World? I don't know yet, it's going to depend, but I guess we'll find out together. All right, thanks again for watching, see you next mission.